Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
He said he gon' huff and puff and blow my mind up. You meet the island girl, she might dirty wind up.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show. I'd like to thank J23 for the intro music. You can find a link to her music in the show notes. My guest today is Mark Porteous. Known as the Soul Connector, Mark is a joint venture strategist, affiliate concierge, and co-founder of the Soul Affiliate Alliance and the Joint Venture Directory. He's also #1 best-selling author of 3 books, including his most recent, Soulful Leadership, which I have right here. We'll be talking about that for sure. Soulful Leadership Tools for a New Way of Being. Mark connects people to who they are at a soul level, why they're here, and the people who can help them thrive in their divine purpose. Mark, welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
Deepak, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I appreciate having you on. It took a while to get you on. I'm glad you're on now. If people read the book, they're going to get a lot of your backstory. So I don't want to give anything away, but I do like to start off with most people that I interview on the podcast, what they're doing now is not usually a traditional career, if you want to call it, not something what you're like 5 or 6 years old. I want to do that. I want to, so as far back as you want to go, as much as detail you want to go, how did you get to where you're at today? Like, give us a little bit of the backstory.
You said as far back as I want to go.
As far back as you want to go. Yeah.
I'm going to the beginning.
I'll put one caveat. Let's not go past life regressions or anything like that.
Yeah, we'll give you this lifetime. So in this lifetime, I was born in 1970 in the city of Angels, Los Angeles, California. 1970 was kind of the cusp of what is known as the age of Aquarius, the golden age that is very relevant, I believe, to where you and I are today, and,
right.
And probably many of the listeners. My father was a minister until I was 6 years old. When I was 6, he and my mom divorced, and the church kicked him out of the church that he had built. So that started his spiritual quest of trying to understand the difference between religion and spirituality. It made my mom become even more connected to Jesus and her Christian community. And so I felt somewhere in between of this search that started literally at 6, but by the time I was 12 years old, I started having visions of having a son who would live in heaven on earth. And to me, that created a lot of conflict in my head. One of like, where is this coming from? I thought maybe it was just leftover stuff from the Bible or from the teachings or whatever else. And then I was like, who am I to have a son that would live in heaven on earth? And so then all of that stuff from 12 until about 18, I just started bearing it because it was coming up in my dreams and day and night. After bearing that for many, many years, when I was 22 years old, I was working for Greenpeace International. And we were going door to door, getting volunteers to send notes and to get donations and stuff. And my girlfriend, who was also working at Greenpeace, brought me into my first metaphysical bookstore called the Spiral Circle in Orlando. And I read a bumper sticker that changed my life. And we've probably all heard it. Most of your listeners have probably heard it, that we are not human beings having spiritual experiences. We're spiritual beings having human experiences. And when I read that, I was like, it helped me to bridge what my father's quest for spirituality and my mother's quest for spirituality and under an umbrella. And so I got very excited and told my father, I went home and called my dad and told him I wanted to write a book called The Human Experience about my understanding of who we are and why we are here. And my dad said, but don't expect to make any money writing a book. You have to have a business. And at the time, I didn't understand that the business and the book could be related.
Right.
So it felt a little discouraging, especially since he had written 3. I was like, well, why do you keep writing books? And I got it now. But at the time, I said, okay, well, what can I do to fund my passion? And a friend of mine was living out of his van in Panama City Beach, Florida, selling hair wraps, which at Grateful Dead concerts, they started there where they would just tie colored strings to hair with beads at the bottom, charge $1 an inch plus beads. And my friend was doing this on the beach, and a guy came up to him and said, "My daughter's been waiting 30 minutes for a hair wrap." And he goes, I'm moving as fast as I can. And he goes, "Oh, I see that. I want you to come do it at Disney." He started selling hair wraps at Disney, and then within 2 years made his first $1 million.
Wow.
And I said, well, if this guy living out of his van can make $1 million, I can do this too, and it will fund my dream and my passion. So I started competing with him in the Orlando area, eventually having parks in California and the largest seasonal amusement park in California, in Ohio, so the Kings Island Amusement Park, where I had 50 employees at that one park, 5 different locations, and a water park across the street. One of those employees was part-time. She worked full-time at a geriatric doctor's office running insurance claims, but she was very organized, and she would do all of my scheduling for all of my employees at 20 years old, and she would do all of my inventory. She would often really hold me accountable for running my own business, and she's been doing that ever since. We got married 3 years later after she moved to Florida. So that was kind of the beginning of what was again all meant to help support my passion and my purpose for talking about the human experience. And I realized I'd invested so much time into running my own business that I didn't have time to actually do any writing or creativity or any. I didn't have space energetically or in my mind. So I went into sales, figuring I could make more money, and within 2 years I could have my book written. So I was working for Time Warner Cable and got very comfortable making a 6-figure income for the first time in my life, and having the freedom to work when I wanted, but also having insurance and getting sent on these exotic vacations to the Bahamas and Jamaica as one of the top sales reps. And then 10 years later, again, I only wanted to be there for 2 years. 10 years later, my wife was pregnant with twins. And that's really what changed everything, because I realized that the 10 years had gone by really fast. Having twins, the next 10 would probably go by a lot faster. And if I didn't do something different, I would be teaching my children what Tim Ferriss calls the deferred lifestyle, of putting off your purpose and your passion for safety and security, which is all illusion anyway. There's really no safety and security in any job. I see that after I left and saw the people in me. But anyway, 1 year after they were born, I had my book written, and my wife helped me to self-publish through CreateSpace, was at the time through Amazon. And then she was the one who challenged me. She said, well, we've been waiting 18 years to write this book. I had this big launch. You're still at this company. What do you want to do now? And I wasn't really sure. I wanted to do something that was aligned with purpose and helping people identify their purpose and live and thrive in their purpose, which I hadn't really been doing. So she suggested life coaching. And in 2011, I wasn't very familiar with life coaching. In fact, to me, I thought life coaches was like a new therapy for rich housewives. I thought those were the only people who had life coaches.
Right.
Didn't realize it was
in 2011 is going way back.
Yeah, 2011 is 13 years ago, and I know people that were coaching in the early 2000s before anybody knew really what coaching was. But to me, I just didn't know, so I wasn't familiar. So I researched. We looked up on Google, how much does the average life coach make? And it was under $20,000 a year. So I said, okay, that won't work.
I don't know if that's changed that much this year.
It's gone up to 30 almost.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
They're thriving with 30,000 a year now. So I said, what else can we do? And she said, well, wait a minute. You just looked up what the average life coach makes. You've never been an average sales rep. Why do you think you're going to be an average life coach? Why don't you look at the top life coaches? And we saw, the Tony Robbins making 8 figures and Lenny making 7, and all of these courses out there that promised if I did exactly what they said and did exactly what they did, I too could make 6 figures in my very first year as a life coach. And so before leaving my company, I got certification to see if this was something I really wanted to do. And my very first life coach asked me what my niche was going to be. I had not even heard the word niche before, but I understood what it meant. And I said that I wanted to be a spiritual coach, at which time he laughed at me and said, okay, well, you're not going to make any money doing that. You can pick any niche you want, but it has to be one of these three. You can pick health, wealth, or love, and then you can sneak in spirituality like medicine and the dog food. So that was kind of my start to it. And in those choices, I said, well, I'll stick with money and business, and I'll help spiritual entrepreneurs, holistic practitioners to be able to market themselves better, and to be able to do better at enrollment. What I found was a lot of people that are service-based, people that are really good at helping others, are not very good at owning their value, and charging what they're worth
Very
and
true. I
marketing themselves.
See it all the time, Mark. And we overlap in some similar circles. So I totally hear you.
Totally, totally. And it's so sad, the really good marketers sometimes are not very good at transformation, and they're the ones that are sucking out the dollars, and there are people that are really good at transformation but not very good at marketing. And so I wanted to shift that, and that was really the beginning of the focus. But what I realized, a big part of it was that I was putting the business part first, and then again, supporting with the spirituality, using those foundations and using discernment and alignment, some of my key practices. But I still was following with the spirituality, and I realized that it's all about leading with soul. My business, I want it to make an impact in the world, but the greatest impact that it can make is on me. If
Right.
my business can help me to become more conscious, to make me a better person, that will make the world better than all the impact that I'm making on my clients and their clients and all the other stuff. So I first look at my business as a path for spiritual growth. And that really was what changed it. Like by doing that, and making sure that everything I did was in alignment, and really running my business as a personal growth, and seeing the areas of the reflections of all of my weaknesses, it helped me to attract people that were also very aligned and wanting to do business differently, where it really was about creating transformation, where it really was about elevating consciousness, and not just about how do we use personal development to buy a new yacht.
Right. Right. I love that, Mark. I love that. And a couple of things. I didn't want to interrupt you. A couple things. So number one, I didn't realize that's how you met Renee, and I've had the pleasure of having a Zoom call with your lovely wife, and she's awesome. Number two, I think we might just title this episode "The Bumper Sticker That Changed My Life." I think that's probably a good title there. And the third thing, just about like the security and whatnot. I remember, just a little sidebar. I had worked for a fairly large corporation when I still worked corporately. And then I left after I was there almost 13 years, 12 and a half years, something like that. And I was at a manager level, and I left to go to like a bit of a startup in the same industry. And I remember my mom saying, like, what are you doing? You're leaving all this and blah, 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 and all the security and all this and et cetera, et cetera. And like within 6 or 9 months of leaving, like my whole department that I was at, if I would have stayed, was like shut down, and like everyone was like fired and all that. So it's like, that worked out, type of thing. But anyway,
Same thing happened with us. It took a year for our department, but there's nobody that was there 3 years later.
right, right. Yeah, and it, sometimes you just got to go with your intuition, right? And what I like to say, the universe led me to that, and then the universe let me go from the corporate world, and I'm so blessed that happened many years ago. So, yeah, you just have to go with it. The first question I wanted to ask you is, you have this the moniker of the soul connector. Where did that come from? How did you get that name?
I love that because as you just said that, it reminded me of the Native Americans. Like you can't pick your spiritual name, has to be given to you. And it was my mentor and teacher, Alan Davidson, who was an evolutionary mystic meditation teacher who happened to be a world-class JV launch manager. He was in Jeff Walker's very first launch program, and was in his platinum program for many years, and used a lot of his training, but it really embedded his spiritual training and beliefs into it. Things like the 5 elements of a sale, which a lot of different teachers use. He was talking about the 5 elements of a soulful offer, of really being able to put it through that lens. And he was actually at a Margaret Lynch event in Massachusetts. I was at a Women's Prosperity Network, the Unconference in Orlando. And he called me. He was on a walk, and he said, I just got this download that you are the soul connector. and that you connect people to who they are at soul level. You connect them to their soul purpose. And most of all, you connect them to their soul tribe, which I later learned is the soul tribe is your perfect customers. And those are the people that you are here to serve. And then there's your dream team. Those are the people that are here to support you in many different ways. And then there's your affiliate ambassadors. And those are your raving fans that are out
Right.
telling people about you. And that's, to me, the soul tribe. And I get the honor of being able to feel like I'm hosting a soul family reunion every day.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. I think that's amazing too when you're working with someone or you have such a, either even a professional relationship or even just a very, very good friend when they know you so well that when they get that download or some inspiration or what have you, they're like, that's this person. And then they call you right away or send you a message or whatever. So that's awesome. I've heard you talk about, leadership being, is a shared mission or a shared vision. What is your, mission or vision for humanity?
It's funny because I've been through a lot of different practices, starting with the True Purpose Institute around what my mission is, and then working with Nancy Matthews and her leadership program about what is my vision, and Red Elephant talking about what is my stand, and they all kind of come together. That I see a future for humanity where all of us recognize each other as divine beings who came here with a purpose, and that we can get to a place where we shift human consciousness from our current state of fear and the illusion of separation back to our natural state of love and deep connection. And to me, that's really heaven on earth. That's that vision that I was starting to have when I was 12 years old. And it's not something that is apocalyptic. It's not something that is even something that we have to strive to create. It's something that we can awaken to right now. Like you and I get to have experiences of being in heaven on earth in our daily lives. We don't get to stay there all the time. We get pulled in and out of the vortex, as it might be called. But that's really what I see, is that when we can all see the divinity in each other, there's a word, namaste. I'm sure you're very familiar with it. And it means the light in me, or the God in me, sees the light or the God in you. And when we can all live like that, that's heaven on earth.
I love that. And I love what you said too. And I'm going to paraphrase it and correct me if I'm wrong. It's not necessarily something that we, heaven on earth or just, a better situation or whatever, however anyone wants to define it. It's not something we necessarily need to create. It's something we just need to be aware of and live ourselves, and that will radiate. And if more of us do that, then it crowds out all the bad stuff. But I got that. That's all I have to say. Yeah, awesome. We're on the same page.
Yeah.
On
And
that
that does
one.
two things, actually. One, it helps to avoid all the negativity, so it doesn't have the same impact on us. It also radiates out to raise the consciousness of the people around us. David Hawkins has a map of consciousness, and he talks about how one person raising their consciousness can raise dozens or hundreds, even thousands of other people. And that's really the focus. It's not to try to change other people. It's to see how other people can help us to evolve.
I just pulling on that string a little bit more, like, again, I think, and some of us have a bigger mission than others, but I think, just start with raising yourself, whatever that looks like for the individual. And you can't help but like that impact your spouse, your kids, your immediate circle, and then that's slowly that everyone's rising up. And again, it just can start small or it can start big, like whatever works for you. And again, that or those those concentric circles when you drop a rock in a pond and it just ripples out. It gets weaker as it goes out, but like it's going out, right? So I love that notion there.
And that is true. That's like anybody can do that. Anybody, and everybody should. Like if you have a big mission already, whatever that big mission is, if you bring it back to like, how can I show up the best version of me, that mission will improve. And if you don't have a big mission and you just work on how can I be the best version of me, the mission will show up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Mark, I don't know if this is on the same train of thought or maybe a little bit of a different direction, but I've heard you talk about, a global crisis in leadership at all levels. So what does that, again, maybe two-part, like what does that mean to you? And then like how as we as individuals can we help with this crisis or alleviate this crisis?
Yeah, I think it does very much go with the last thing about like the different levels. And on when I say leadership on all levels, starting with personal leadership, that is the way to start. And then it's in your family, the way that you parent, the way that you are as a spouse, and just being conscious of it and working on being the best you can in those areas radiates out to, again, your community. If you're in a church or if you're in different organizations, it could be Toastmasters. If you show up to Toastmasters as the best version of yourself, other people are going to see that and they're going to want to be around you, and they're going to want to emanate what your behaviors and your actions. So that's the leadership that I'm talking about. But when you say all levels going up to the top, you're in Canada, I'm in the United States. We're going into our election season, like we're heavy into it. It's creating a lot of division.
I don't know if you heard, but like we might be going to an election early this fall
I
as
did
well.
not
So
hear.
that just came out yesterday. So
I did not hear that. Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, for any of those, we won't dwell on this, but like Canada's been run by a coalition government, and one of the parties essentially pulled out. So we might have an early election this
And
fall.
I
Anyway, I
love like
digress.
it's such an important thing because I think politics is not about the values, but like the systems and the structures that they run. Like I love comparing Canada, where there's 40 different parties, versus us where there's two parties. I do a lot of studying on human psychology and even game theory. Game theory isn't about games. Game theory is about how people make decisions to make their life better. And one of the things that came out in game theory, and this is related to politics, is that they have all of these different ideas on like what is the best success strategy. And what they found out that it's tit for tat is the best game strategy, which means that you're going to copy whatever anybody else does for you. So if somebody's generous to you, you're going to be generous back. And as long as they're generous to you, you're going to be generous back. But if they're not generous to you once, then you're going to repeat that and not be generous to them. Now, if they go back, and this is again, that can get very, very complex, but the idea is that you want to be generous, but you also have to be a stand for yourself and not be a doormat.
Right.
But that if you're totally narcissistic and just thinking about yourself, you'll have a short-term gain ahead of the others, but a long-term loss, where it's the opposite. If you're looking really at how do we collaborate and how do we work together, short term, you're not as high of a spike on the selfish needs and goals, but long term, your survival goals, everything works out much, much better. So the idea of how do we work together to collaborate, and that's what politics is really about. We're in this time where people have to figure out that in order to whatever's in our best interest has to be in the best interest of the whole. We really have to be able to work together. Division doesn't help any of us.
100% agree. And again, I don't want to dwell too much on politics per se, but I think there's influences that have over the last X number of years has really pulled, I think, you go back to the standard deviation, bell curve for like almost everything. It works in almost every case. And it's like, we're like at the, the three standard deviations away. We need to get back towards like the middle, right? Right. And probably more so in the US than in Canada, but certainly other places in the world too. It's like all the people making a lot of noise are all at the third deviation away from center, right? And that's who are listening
The
to,
bell curve is almost like a pendulum. It swings and you go to one side, then you come back to the middle, then you go to the other side. It'd be nice if we could just stay in the middle, but it doesn't seem to work that way.
For sure, for sure. Anyway, we kind of went on a politics slant, but I want to go back to just the original
About
question.
leadership.
Yeah, crisis and leadership at all levels.
Yeah. And again, that's the highest level because again, it's about politics, but it goes back to education. It goes back to within our schools or our communities, leadership, or even in companies. It's a huge part of that. Like Patagonia, the clothing company, several years ago, because of the extra tax bracket that they were in, got like a $10 million refund. And the owner of the company said, we don't need the refund. as much as Patagonia needs the climate protection. So they donated their whole $10 million refund to protect that. Now they did that because of their values and beliefs. That ended up giving them over $100 million in free ads because all the stories were talking about, wow, they're giving away their $10 million refund. And again, so you want to be driven by the value, not by the outcome. They weren't doing it to get the free publicity. And so when you're a leader of a company, again, you want to be driving by the values. And we have to hope that, again, everybody goes by their highest values, but we can't judge what other people's values are. That was one of the biggest challenges for me personally in climbing that map of consciousness, where I realized that I didn't like being judged, but I also didn't like judging other people. And I saw all the different ways that I would judge people for not just political beliefs, but how they spend their time, who puts their recycling out, why aren't they recycling? And who am I to judge these things? In the process of doing that, though, I realized I was in Tony's program and they had I'd done a lot of values and virtues exercises, but we listed our top 7 and I had 8. And number 8 was justice. And our instructor was saying, well, we have to be very careful when you're focused on consciousness. If you have justice as a value or a virtue, that leads to judgment automatically. If you want justice, you have to decide what's right and what's wrong. And I realized I was taking on this whole Christ complex of feeling like it was important for me to have justice served, because if it didn't happen, if I didn't do my part, justice wouldn't be served. And it's almost like saying God needed me to be a judge, a jury, and an executioner of justice. And letting that go and realizing I don't have to point out any injustice in the world. All I had to do is show up in the most just way that I can.
Right. I love that. Yeah, I think back to my own, and I'd love to say I'm improving. Let's just put it on. I'm improving. When I go back to like, yeah, how people, all those things you said, or they recycle, or they pick up after their dog, and
Right.
or whatever, like how their appearance, and it's like, who am I to judge people? I don't know their story. People are on their own journeys, as I am on my own journey. So yeah, that's something I've become more conscious of when I'm making judgments of others, and I got to check myself. And it's more than I have to check myself more than I like, for sure. So I love that. Mark, as we slowly come to a wrap here, I do like to ask all my guests this question. Now, I'm all about health, but this podcast is not focused on health. But I do like to ask my guests, what is your morning routine or health practices or something? What's a non-negotiable for you in that realm?
This
Water.
A gallon a day.
Awesome.
One of my teachers is the founder of the Center for Functional Nutrition, and he teaches about the 7 roots of health. And one of them is the water cure, which anybody can look up the water cure, and Google it, but it's basically a certain number of ounces. I think it's a half an ounce for every pound that you weigh. And most people are highly dehydrated. I know I certainly was.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting. We don't have to go on to this test. I actually, when I'm exercising, which doesn't kind of is counterintuitive, but when I'm exercising, I actually prefer to be slightly dehydrated. I feel I actually perform a little bit better. I don't have that water sloshing around.
Sure.
Certainly when I used to run competitively, it's a fine balance, of course, but I actually used to be just like to be a little bit on the dehydrated side. And I think that's still that practice still tends to carry forward with me. And because again, by the time I get to, and I have an infrared sauna at my house, as many of the listeners have heard me say before. So when I come out of there, of course, I need to replenish all that I sweat. And then I was like, now I really need to replenish for like my whole day, where I'm always a little bit behind. So yeah, that's great. I love that, the water there.
Working out is an important part of it and I've become more and more aware of it getting older, just moving. And I actually have a treadmill that I can put under my desk that rises.
Oh, love that.
And haven't been using it enough. And I'm like, okay, well, I just need to make sure that I get comfortable having calls while I'm walking. But I do make sure that I either swim, bike, or I'm doing weights Monday through Friday in the morning. Because if I don't do it in the morning, it's not getting done. And then I can drink water after that. I try to get at least a half gallon by 1 o'clock because I don't want to be drinking in the evening so that I don't have to use the restroom all night
Yeah,
at all.
yeah. Also, just tip for everyone: you don't want to be having a ton of watermelon right before you go to bed either.
Watermelon?
Watermelon. Yeah, I've made that mistake before. You know, even if you have it like an hour before you go to bed, it just takes a while to get out of your system, and you're like up. And anyway, I digress.
That's another thing. I don't know if you are into the interval dieting,
Intermittent fasting.
intermittent fasting. Yes,
Yeah, yeah, I do
another thing
that.
I try not to eat at all after 8, and I rarely eat at all before noon.
Yeah, I have a similar practice depending on the day for sure. Yeah, and it's super beneficial. I find it for myself, and I don't think it's always for everyone, but I think many people can benefit of just not eating so often. For
Yeah.
sure, for sure. You have a gift for the listeners. It's soulfulleadershipretreat.com/roadmap. Can you just describe what that gift is?
It's the Soulful Leadership Roadmap, and it basically is the map that I use with all of my clients about the process of connecting to who you are, connecting to why you're here, and then connecting to your soul tribe. So we go through the different steps and everything that I use for helping people to show up fully so that they can own their value, how to be very clear on what is their customer journey, and then the process that you need in order to attract JV partners and people to collaborate with, by being very clear on the value that you offer to your clients, who you serve, all of that. So it's basically all of my intellectual property put into a free gift, including at the very end of it, it's called something called the discernment process. And discern is the acronym that I use for how to tell if somebody's really a good fit to collaborate and to support each other.
Awesome. And I imagine the application can be in any industry or any sort of partnership relationship type of thing.
It is, yeah, and that's the idea, is that a lot of times people are reluctant to have go into partnerships in whatever industry because they may have had a bad experience. And so this is really how to create positive partnerships in any business.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. And that link, as well as all other links for Mark and where to find him on the social medias and et cetera, will all be in the show notes, everyone. So you can go there and check Mark out, connect with him, and download this free gift. Now, I said it at the beginning, and we kind of went and talked about a few different things. I just want to very briefly come back to the book that I got from you almost a year ago, last October. We were at an event together, and I got this. It's I guess what you call it, a collaboration book. Would that be a way to
Yep.
say
Collaboration
it?
is how I always call it, and some
Yeah,
editors call it an anthology.
right. And there's a couple of your fellow chapter contributors who've already been guests on the podcast. So so that's amazing. The Hogs.
The Hoax.
Yeah, the Hogs.
Well, Greg Hoax.
Yeah. So
Jim.
maybe really briefly, what can people expect if they pick up this book? And we'll put the link in the show notes as well to purchase this.
Sure. And I realize you actually have one of the early copies. I can tell because of how shiny it is.
Oh, I keep my books like very well as well. They're my prized possessions. You can see all behind me here, but maybe I do.
That was one of the early release ones that I had to bring to that event.
Yes.
So it's a special edition that you have. And again, it is an anthology. It's also divided the book that you have into the 3 sections I was talking about. So we have 7 different authors talking about different tools that they use to connect to who they are and to tap into their intuition. So you'll get personal stories and tools from each of the authors. We have a link in the book as well, how to download gifts from all of the authors. Second one, just like with my brand, connecting to why you're here. So these are tools for monetizing your mission. And then the 3rd section for connecting to your soul tribe, stories and tools and practices to build and grow your audience.
Awesome. I mean, so yeah, definitely check it out. It was a great read. And like I mentioned at the top, And you did share, a lot of your backstory at the beginning here, but it was a great introduction to some of your story and or earlier in your life. So I really appreciated that.
Well,
Mark,
actually, one real quick thing in there is one of my favorites was in it 2 different years. Natalie Ledwell is the founder of Mind Movies,
okay,
and in her first book, she talked about what it takes to play a bigger game, even when she was at a $10 million company, what it looked like for her to play a bigger game. In the second book, her and her ex-husband, Glenn Ledwell, wrote a chapter together on how to create partnerships strong enough to thrive even through divorce. So for 5, 6 years, 7 years, maybe now, they've been running a multi-million-dollar business together. And in the book, they will share exactly how they did that.
I think anyone's having challenges in the relationship, that's worth alone picking up to see, get some tips on that.
Yes.
So that's amazing. Mark, any last words of wisdom, golden nuggets, or anything you'd like to share with the audience?
Mostly, again, just to be able to really embody the fact that you are a divine being. It's nice and easy to say that. And if you can really believe it, treat yourself like a divine being. And if you can practice that, if you can practice more self-love, that self-love will radiate out to more love to everyone else. And that will also attract more love into your life as well. So practice more self-love. That's what I would say.
I love that. I think more people need to be more self-love in general and be more consistent with their self-love, I would say. And I think, and I don't want to generalize, but I think it's the people younger than us anyway are having more trouble with that, I think. Social media, whatever it is, I don't know, but have more self-love, everyone. That's a great tip. I forgot, Mark, I want one more thing. I want to plug one more thing for you is you have a retreat coming up here in, every February. The next one coming up here, February 2025. So it's a couple months away from when this episode is released. Really quick, we'll include the links where people can attend. Really quick, high level, like what is the retreat all about? Why should people sign up?
Sure. So last year we had 110 people there in Orlando. This year we'll have over 200. These are all people that are either already running successful businesses as leaders in the transformation industry or are striving to do so. The main thing is really about building connections. So it's not a pitch fest. It's really designed to make sure that everybody there meets the people that they need to meet. It is in Orlando in February, which is a really nice time to be there. Like you said, you'll have all of the details, and if people have questions, we're welcome to reach out to me directly. But in this time where everybody's been meeting on Zoom for so long, we had our first event in 2020, and then 4 weeks later, the whole world shut down. We had our first live event again last year, and it was a hybrid, and it kind of split the energy. Doing it this year with just in person, the depth of the connection, you step into a room and you don't have to try to explain it. It's just a beautiful container, and we would love to have you there if you feel called.
Awesome. And I made it my mission. Me and Mark have talked about this before, and our family vacation always overlaps with his event. So not 25 and 26, I'm going to make it work so that I can attend myself, because I know many people who've gone. It's a fantastic event. So again, we'll have all the information there. And if you're anywhere, and not all of you are, but for those of you who are in that space, definitely check it out for sure. So, Mark, I want to thank you again for your graciousness and your time to show up today for the Deepak Saini Show. I really appreciate it, my friend.
My pleasure. We were talking about self-love. One piece of that is if you find yourself not giving yourself self-love, if you find yourself talking mean to yourself, be forgiving as well. That's a part of the self-love, is to forgive you when you're off the cart and just get back on.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you for closing that point. So awesome, my friend. I'm going to throw it back to J23, who's going to guide us out with some music. Also, don't forget to check out today's show sponsor at the end here. And again, thanks everyone listening to the Deepak Saini Show. Remember, exceptional results for the exceptional you. Thanks, Mark. Have a great one, everyone. This episode is brought to you by Optimizers. I love their product, Gluten Guardian. Now, I'm not celiac, but I am sensitive to gluten, and sometimes you just can't avoid it. You're out. Sometimes you just want to celebrate that birthday cake that your kids made, what have you. So I'll pop a couple of these pills just to help mitigate the inflammation and help break down the gluten that I may ingest sometimes. So Gluten Guardian also works with dairy as well. I take these occasionally, and click the link and you can save 10% off at least, if not more. Cheers.
Podcast produced by the Minted Green Company